Hi, I'm Barrett, and welcome to Vestibular Training. Let's get in it, shall we? So before we get into actual vestibular training, why do we actually want to look at the vestibular system? So our vestibular system, we have one on the left and one on the right. It does a lot of stuff for us. So one of the things that it does for us is it wants to basically tell our brain where you're going, where are you going, and which way is up. It also deals with a lot of balance mechanics as well as stability mechanics. So basically it helps us get more stable when it comes to relation to gravity. Now, what it actually does is it helps set the tones or the synergies between flexors and extensor muscles of the midline of our body. So in other words, it's making us more stable from the midline, basically our spine and eyes of our body. Now, another thing that it also does is it helps us when it comes to blood pressure related to gravity. So have you ever noticed that whenever you're sitting down or laying down and you get standing up relatively fast and you start getting really lightheaded, this could be something that you might want to actually look at, is the vestibular system. Now, with that being said, let's kind of get in a little anatomy lesson about the actual vestibular system itself. Now, the easiest way to understand the vestibular system is going like this. We have 5 different parts. We have 5 on the left and 5 on the right. And what they consist of, it's 3 semicircular canals and then 2 what's called otolith organs. Now we're going to get into understanding how to train the semicircular canals as well as the 2 otolith organs. So let's get into it. So before we get into the actual vestibular work, we got to warm up our vestibular system. So if we look at the nerve that innervates this system, it's cranial nerve number 8, which is the vestibulocochlear nerve. Now there's a 2-part to this nerve. We have the vestibulo or vestibular system, and then we have the cochlear or the base of the cochlea, so hearing. So we're actually going to utilize hearing to warm up our vestibular system. So here's what I'm going to have you do. You're just going to take your fingers and you're going to rub them together. What I want you to do is you're going to rub them relatively close to your ear at first, and then you're going to move it away until you can't hear it anymore. So you're just going to do a few reps of that. Come back. One more time. Now we're going to do it on the other side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of a 3D mapping of hearing. So in other words, I'm going to rub my fingers together, but I'm going to draw circles with my hand at the same time. So I'm kind of getting an auditory processing from different angles. So I'm here. You can snap if you need to, if it's not loud enough. So you kind of get an idea. And then other side too. Making sure that you go behind your body as well, in front and behind. And good. So this is a great way to kind of warm up your vestibular system. Now, before we get into actually training the vestibular system, I want you to get into the habit of assessing and reassessing each and every single one of these exercises, because we got to make sure that that 3 pounds of jelly, AKA your brain, likes these exercises. So if you notice that if you're doing this while standing and you're reassessing worse, try doing it while sitting down or even laying down to kind of make it a little bit easier on your nervous system. And now if you want to progress these and make these even more of a challenge, try doing them in a neutral stance, like basically feet close together, a narrow stance. Try doing them in different lunging positions, different body positions. These are ways to create more of a neuro load on the system to create possibly a better output. So we have basically a way to bring the threat down, do it while seated or laying down, or bringing it up and basically putting more of a load on the nervous system by holding different lunge positions, maybe even single leg positions while doing this to kind of make it a little bit more intense on the nervous system. So now, with that being said, let's get into it. So the first things we're going to look at is what are called VORs and aVORs. So VOR stands for vestibulo-ocular reflex. So the vestibular system and the eye system, visual system, communicate together to make sure that we are able to see stuff while in motion. So in other words, have you ever noticed whenever you're running down a road, like whenever you're sprinting or whenever you're going on a jog, you notice that you are actually able to see a very clear map of what you're looking at. And then if you were to run with a camera and you notice the camera is all over the place going crazy. So this is what a VOR is, being able to see something, hold a gaze fixation with your head in motion. So in other words, we're going to work on VORs, vestibular, ocular, eyes, reflex. So we actually have an actual reflex of this. So here is how this is going to work. We're going to look at the horizontal canals, we're going to look at the posterior canals, and then the anterior canals. So we have horizontal, posterior, anterior canals. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the nose and yeses, and then we're going to get a little bit more specific with each canal. So how it's going to look. First things first, you're going to utilize that handy dandy thumb. Now, before we even do this, I want you to assess that forward fold and that back bend before you even do this exercise. So if I were to bend over, touch my toes, okay, I have an idea how far I can lean back. I have an idea. So now what I'm going to have you do is we're going to look at the left horizontal canal. So we have a left horizontal canal. We have a right horizontal canal. So I'm going to turn sideways so it kind of makes it a little bit easier for you to see me. I'm going to bring my finger out, my thumb out, straight ahead. I'm going to tilt my chin ever so slightly. Now from here, you're going to give me 3 reps. You're going to keep your eyes fixated on the thumb. You're going to turn your head relatively fast to the left. You're going to make sure that you can see with both eyes on that thumb. So I'm going to tilt my chin a little bit. I'm going to turn my head left relatively fast, making sure that both eyes can see it. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to come back to center relatively slow. Do it again. Close my eyes, come back relatively slow. One more time, turn, close, come back to center. Now, just by doing those 3 reps, I want you to go ahead and reevaluate that forward fold in that back bend. So if I were to bend over and touch my toes again, I got a little bit further. If I lean back, I got quite a bit further. So that's a good reevaluation. Now, what I'm going to have you do is we're going to do the right side of the horizontal canal. So now we're going to go to the other side, same exact thing. This time I'm going to look directly at the camera and kind of do it a little bit in front. So if I'm here, I tuck my chin, make sure you can kind of see me just a little bit. And then from here, just turn my head, close my eyes, come back to center, boom, do it again. Close my eyes, come back to center. One more time, close my eyes, come back to center. Now, with that being said, go ahead and reevaluate this side because we have a left and a right. So if I were to reevaluate, got a little bit even further, which is a good reevaluation. That feels a lot better to me. So you might notice that one side reevaluates better than the other. That's totally normal because we have a vestibular system on the left and a vestibular system on the right. So now let's look at, so that was nose. So eventually, do I want you to be able to combine both canals? Yes. So in other words, both canals will look like this. I'm combining left, right, left, right, left, right. Eventually, we want to get there. Now, if you feel like you could do that, give that a shot and reevaluate. But if not, try this just working on that one canal at a time. So now we're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to look at the posterior and anterior canals of the vestibular system. So it's the same setup, but instead of saying no, we're going to be saying yes. So in other words, I'm still going to get into that position. So I'm going to turn sideways so you can kind of see me. I'm still here. Now what we're going to do is as I go back and tilt my head back, I'm getting both posterior canals. So my left and right are communicating with each other to get that posterior canal activation on both sides. So I'm here. I'm just going to look, basically my eyes stay fixated on my thumb. I'm going to look, pull my head back, close my eyes, come back to center. Do it again. Come back to center one more time. So what we are doing is we are getting both the left and right posterior canals working together. So go ahead and reevaluate that forward fold and that back bend and see if you got any better. And if so, this is a great exercise for you. So now we're going to move on to the anterior canal. So we have the backward part of yes. So the anterior now is going to be basically taking your chin down to your chest. So same exact setup, that thumb in front. I'm just going to tilt my head down with my eyes staying fixated on the thumb. Oh, close my eyes, coming back up. Again, closing my eyes. One more time. And good. So now reevaluate those, because you might notice going to the anterior might actually reevaluate better than the posterior and vice versa. So we have to make sure that your brain likes it. So those are VORs. So we have the nose, and then we have the yeses. And yes, you can combine the two of the posterior and anterior canals. So eventually working on these bad boys here as well. So those are VORs, vestibulo-ocular reflexes. So now the next one we're going to be looking at is the aVORs, or angular VORs. So this is the way to kind of, instead of getting both posterior and anterior canals working together, kind of individualize each way. So how this is going to look is I'm just going to do it on my, I'm going to do it on my my left side. I want you to try out both of these. But how it's going to look is I'm going to have that eye position on my thumb. I'm going to turn my head ever so slightly to the left and then pull it back. Now this one, if you're like me and you have a big nose, your nose is going to get in the way relatively easy. We want to make sure that we can see the target with both eyes, all right? So the entire time. So don't ever let your nose get in the way here. So if I turn sideways, I'm here, I'm going to turn my head to the left ever so slightly and then pull it back. I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to come back down to center, to the left and back. One more time. Left and back. Good. So that is the left posterior canal activation. So you can do the same thing on the right. Turn your head to the right, tilt it back. Close your eyes, turn your head to the right and tilt it back. Now, after you do about 3 to 5 reps of this, making sure that you reevaluate each and every single time. So if I were to do this in an actual normal position, I would take probably that turnout and I would just immediately turn my head in that angle position. So if I actually were to do this in a more intense way, it would be here and I would just go straight back, boom. Close my eyes, come back to center, boom, like so. So that is the posterior angular VOR for the posterior on the left side canal. And the right side, now we're going to look at the anterior canals on both sides. So the anterior canal, so if we look at it, we have right or left horizontal going straight across. We have left posterior, right, left horizontal, left posterior. Now most of the time you're probably thinking right anterior is going to, or left anterior is going to be going like so. It's not. It's actually your nose going away from that position. So we want to think about if I'm going right, left posterior to left anterior. So same concept. My hand comes out. I'm going to turn my head actually to the right a little bit and then tilt it down. And that is getting my left anterior canal to fire. Closing my eyes, coming back up, turn my head to the right and down. And one more time, turning my head to the right and down. Good. Now, if we're doing this correctly, you should actually be able to smooth that out. So kind of taking that head turn out of the position to where I can just go straight into that position itself. So I just take my nose, tilt it down to the floor, making sure my eyes can see that thumb the entire time. So that is the left anterior canal. So the right anterior canal would be the same thing, just going the opposite direction. So instead of going down into my right, I'm going to be going down into my left. Close my eyes, back up, back down, and so forth, so forth. So once again, what I want you to do is I want you to try each one of these, do about 3, maybe 5 reps, and then reevaluate that forward fold and that back bend. Now, if you're noticing that some of these exercises you're reassessing very, very well for, this might be something to make a note of, and these are things that you can work on, you know, in the morning, in the evenings, in between sets while working out, because what this is doing is this is actually setting the tone, the musculature tone of flexion and extension muscles, making you more stable. So those are angular VORs. So if we look at this all together, we have horizontal canal, left and right. We have posterior canals, anterior canals on both sides. Then if I wanted to get, say, just the left side and just the right side, how it's going to look is I'm going to go left posterior, left anterior, left posterior, left anterior. Now, if I want to do the opposite side, right posterior, right anterior, right posterior, right anterior. Now, once again, I want you to try each and every single one of these by themselves. Don't combine them quite just yet. Assess and reassess each and every single one of them. And then if you feel comfortable, try combining them together like what I just did there. So both together, both together, both together, and so forth, and reevaluate each one of these. So that is VORs and angular VORs in a nutshell. So now that we've looked at VORs and angular VORs, what we want to look at next is what are called VOR-Cs. So this stands for vestibulo-ocular reflex cancellation. So we actually have the reflex itself. Now the next thing we want to look at is actual canceling this reflex. So this is a great way for a huge like frontal lobe activation. So basically what we want to look at, it's the same kind of concept. So if I'm looking at my finger, but instead of having my head move and the object staying still, now I want to think about a line between my eyes to my thumb, like a string, and I want to move with that target the entire time. So we're going to be working on the cancellation of this actual reflex. So here's how it's going to look. It's going to be the same thing with the VORs and angular VORs, but this time instead of just having the head moving, the object is going to be moving with it. Now, most common mistakes people make on this is the object moves too fast, so their head is having to catch up to it. So in other words, it looks like this. And they're kind of doing like little VORs to catch up. We want to try and make sure that as the object moves, my head moves with the object, okay? So here's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the horizontal canals. We're going to look at both posterior canals, and then we're going to do angular VOR-Cs. So here's how it's going to look. So if we're looking at the horizontal canal going to the left, I'm still going to get into that position. I'm going to tuck that chin ever so slightly. Now, if I'm going to the left, I'm moving with it. Close your eyes, come back close to center. Do it again. Closing my eyes, coming back close to center. One more time. Boom. Close, coming back to center. Now, by doing just those 3 reps, reevaluate that forward fold and back bend and see if that got any better. Now, what you might notice, since this is kind of a inhibitory exercise, we're inhibiting that reflex, we're getting a huge frontal lobe activation, so you actually might reevaluate quite well on these. So this is a great way to work on head and neck stability. So if you notice that like you have a lot of head and neck instability, like you're noticing your head is always going like this whenever you're walking or anything like this might be an exercise that you want to work on more often, should I say. So now we're going to go to the right horizontal canal with the VOR-C. So I'm still in that same position. I'm tucking my chin. Now from here, I'm just going to turn, boom, go as far as you possibly can comfortably, close your eyes, come back to center relatively slow. Whoop. One more time. Nice and slow. Last one. Boom. Now, just by doing those 3, go ahead and reevaluate, reassess that forward fold and back bend. Now, you might notice that one side actually gets better than the other. That's totally normal. Sometimes you might have one side that's overactivated and one that's underactivated, and you need to activate that side a little bit more. Now, can you combine these? Yes, you can combine both canals. Now, how it normally looks is you're going to need 2 thumbs. This is the easiest way to kind of think of it, is you're going to need 2 thumbs for it. You're just going to start. So in other words, if I turn my head to the left with my thumb, as I come technically back to center while following it, I'm getting that right side to activate. So it's going to be left horizontal canal, right horizontal canal, left horizontal canal, right horizontal canal. Now, if I want to combine them both ways, it would look something like this. Left, 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 right, 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 left, 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 right, 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 right. So that is the horizontal canal for VOR-Cs. So now let's look at the same for the posterior and anterior canal. So we did nose. Now we're going to be doing yeses. Now, once again, making sure that you are reevaluating or reassessing, even if you're doing both of them combined, to make sure that your nervous system, that your brain actually likes these exercises. So now here's what's going to happen. You're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to utilize that handy dandy thumb. Same concept. I'm going to turn it sideways. You're just going to go straight back with the thumb looking straight up to the sky. So I'm here. Whoop. Close my eyes. Come back down to center. Same thing. Whoop. Coming back down slow to center. One more time. Boom. And good. Making sure to reevaluate, to reassess that exercise. So basically that forward fold, that back bend. Then we're going to go to the next one, which is going to be going down. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, looking at my thumb, go straight down to the floor. Close my eyes, come back to center. Close my eyes, come back to center. One more time. Come back to center. Now, reassessing those as well. So I'm basically making this video so that way you can pause it and reassess and everything. So I might be moving fast, but you can always pause this video. So now we're going to combine both of them. This one you only need like one thumb. So I can be here, going down, going up, down, up, and so forth, so forth. So try that one out as well. Now, if you notice that you might feel a little unstable or a little dizzy, try this while sitting down. Don't have to do it while standing. So another progressions of this is doing this while moving. So like maybe in a lunge. So like if I'm looking at a VOR-C going to my right, I lunge out with my left, boom, I come back to center. So these are ways to integrate these exercises into other motions as well. So we had horizontal left and right. We have both dual posterior and anterior going up and down. Now the last ones we're going to look at is basically the angle of VOR-C. So if I'm looking at my left horizontal canal, or my left posterior canal on my left side, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be going up and to my left. So up and to my left, close my eyes, come back down to center. Same thing over and over again. Nice and easy. Now on these posterior canals, what I want you to do is take it nice and easy, because sometimes whenever we go into those positions, people are not necessarily ready for this, and it can cause some irritation and cause dizziness and all sorts of stuff like that. So be nice and slow. Instead of going all the way back here, possibly maybe only going to here, you're still getting that anterior canal, or sorry, that posterior canal activating, but it's just not as an intense degree, because sometimes going into this position is a very compromised position for individuals. So just be careful with this one in particular. So now we're going to do the same thing going to that left anterior canal. So I would be here, I'm going to be going down into my right for my left anterior canal, closing my eyes, coming back to center. So forth and so forth. Nice and easy. Now we can combine them. So this one I am going to need two hands. So if I'm combining my left posterior going down to left anterior, left posterior, left anterior. So these are great ways to combine them. Now making sure, I can't stress this enough, to assess and reassess every single one of these exercises, because you got to make sure your nervous system actually enjoys these exercises. So now let's go to the right side. Same exact concept, just on that right side. So I'm looking at my thumb, going back into the right, closing my eyes, coming back to center. Taking the time to make sure that I am getting the activation that that vestibular system needs. Boom. So that would have been right there is that right posterior canal. Now we're going to go do the same thing for that right anterior canal. So I'm here, right anterior going down to the left. I close my eyes. I come back to center, nice and easy. Once again, closing my eyes, coming nice and easy back to center. So now let's go ahead and combine them. So if I'm going to go up and to the right, down and to the left, up and to the right, down and to the left. Making sure to assess and reassess both of these to make sure that your nervous system actually likes it. So reviewing it of VOR-Cs, we have horizontal canals. We have both posterior and anterior canals. Then we have left posterior, left anterior, and then we have right posterior, right anterior canals. So those are VOR-C, so vestibulo-ocular reflex cancellations. So that reflex between our eyes and our inner ear, we are canceling that out. So it makes it more of an inhibitory activation, which is going to create more frontal lobe activation. So that's something that we might want to look at for some people, including yourself, myself. I benefit from VOR-Cs quite a bit, but these are things that we can look at for those. All right, home stretch here. We got two more things to look at for vestibular training. We have the two otolith organs. So the first one we're going to look at, so both of them, we have one called the utricle, and then we have one called the saccule. The utricle deals with linear motions forwards, backwards, sideways, and then also with head tilts. Basically, head tilts going down, head tilts going back. Now, the best way to kind of look at these is thinking about head motions. You can utilize different, motions of your head to kind of get that activation. But another one is nice and easy, moving fast forward, moving fast backwards to get this activation. So most of the time, what I have people do, or have people that need to have this activation, is normally putting something on the wall off into the distance and have them stare at that object and power walk relatively fast towards that object. Now, obviously don't want them to hit it, but like have them get relatively close and then all of a sudden also pushing back away and going backwards relatively fast to get it. You're trying to minimize bouncing, so you shouldn't be doing this motion. You should be thinking about linear motions forward and back for this activation of the utricle. So now, an easier way to do this is actually utilizing forward and backward motions of the neck. So if I turn sideways here, and if I'm looking at my thumb, because we always want a visual target, because our vestibular system, as well as our visual system, actually work hand in hand with each other. They're very, very closely intertwined with each other. So we want to make sure that we have a visual target. So here, if I want to get a utricle activation going forward and back, I would think about pushing my head forward fast, pulling it back fast. Pushing it forward, pulling it back. Pushing forward, pull it back. Now, doing it fast is going to get more activation of it because it deals with acceleration and deceleration motions. But if you don't feel comfortable moving your neck that fast, doing just a regular fast motion is going to get the same activation, or not as much, but still getting the point across. So try that out. So I call this the rooster. It's actually a good neck mobility exercise, but pushing your head forward relatively fast and pulling it back and giving yourself a double chin relatively fast. Once you get done with maybe say 3 to 5 reps, reevaluate, reassess that forward fold as well as that back bend. So that was for utricle going forward and back. Now utricle also deals with side to side motions. Something you can do is kind of get a wide stance and having that object in front. So if I use the camera, I'd be here guiding myself side to get that utricle activation going side to side. Now, whenever we're doing this, we want to try and stay on the same plane of motion while doing this, because if I start going here and doing side to side as up and down, I'm getting a combination of utricle and saccule activation. So what I would recommend, if I want to get just my left utricle to fire, I go on one side, quickly move to the other side. Now, if I want to get to the right, I would get that right, left, right. So these are easy ways to get the left versus the right for the utricle. So once again, try, if I want to get just the left side, I'd be here, move fast, close my eyes, slowly come back to that one side, open my eyes, get the visual target, move fast. So these are great ways to activate that utricle going to the left, and then same thing going towards the right. So what I want you to do is try that out, going just to the left about 3 or so times, reevaluate or reassess, and then doing the same thing going to the right, reevaluate or reassess that forward fold and back bend. So that is utricle when it comes to linear motions, forward, backwards, side to side. Now, it also deals with head tilts. Probably a little bit. So like whenever you're doing VORs like this, you're technically also getting utricle activation. But we're going to test each one of them. So now what you're going to do is we're going to, the same thing. You got that visual target in front like you're doing a VOR, but now you're just going to tilt your head to the left or to the right and to the left. So the same thing applies here. I'm going to turn sideways ever so slightly. Thumb comes out. I'm going to go to my right first. I'm just going to tilt my head, close my eyes, slowly come back to center. Tilt, close my eyes, slowly come back to center. What I want you to do is you're going to give me 3 to 5 reps, reevaluate, reassess. Can't stress that enough because we want to make sure your nervous system likes these things and is not doing more harm than good. Now, once again, if you're noticing that you're doing this while standing and you're reassessing worse, try doing it while sitting down, or try while doing it laying down on your back. I just tilt my head and try that out. It actually brings the threat down to where you actually might have a positive reevaluation. To whereas if you're somebody who's a little bit more advanced, maybe doing this in different lunge positions, different body positions, can have more of a impact on the nervous system because it wants that threat. It wants more of that stimulus to create a better output. All right. So that was going to the right, doing the same thing going to the left. So I'm just looking at that visual target, tilt my head to the left, close my eyes, slowly coming back to center, doing it again, boom, and so forth, so forth. So this is a great way to work on utricle, forward, backwards, sideways, and then head tilts. Technically, if I'm doing this, I'm getting utricle activation. If I'm doing this, I'm getting utricle activation. All right, so you can also test here, going back, hold, slowly come back up, do it again, slowly coming back up, and then the same thing, going forward, same exact concept. So that's the utricle. Now the last one we're going to look at is what's called the saccule. Now the saccule deals with up and down motions. So this one's relatively easy to get because you're just going to go down and you're going to go up. So first one is what I recommend is if you want to activate this is just working on dropping into kind of a quarter squat. Give yourself a visual target in front and you just drop relatively fast. Close your eyes, slowly come back up, drop, close your eyes, slowly come back up. So that's getting the downward motion. Now the same thing applies going up. So I'm going to get into that quarter squat. I'm going to give myself a visual target. I'm going to go up fast. Close, come back down into that quarter squat, open, coming up fast. Same thing, let's do it one more time. Eyes closed, visual target, coming up nice and fast. So now, once again, try dropping down, 3 or so reps, reevaluate. Try going from the bottom to the top, 3 or 4 reps or so, reevaluate, and then basically how would you combine these? This is kind of a fun one, is just bouncing. So I'm just here. Sorry, I hold the mic so it doesn't make too much crazy noise, but bouncing like so with a visual target is a great way to work on your saccule. So jump rope is a great way to work on your saccule, just making sure that you have a visual target off in the distance. You can also do it with your eyes closed, makes it a little bit more intense, but basically jump rope is a great way for sacculal stimulus. So that is the otolith organs. So if we look at it, we had the utricle, forward, back, sideways, head tilts, and then accelerations going forward and tilting down, and then accelerations going back and tilting backwards. And then we had saccule, which is down and up, combining them, going down and up relatively fast. Now, can you combine these together? Yes. Most of the time, whenever you're working on sprinting mechanics and all that kind of stuff, you're getting a combination of both. So these are things that you want to look at when it comes to training your vestibular system, when it comes down to overall performance as well as a healthy vestibular system because of what our vestibular system does for us. So this is kind of an easy guide of understanding. We have VORs, aVORs, we have VOR-Cs, aVOR-Cs, and then we have utricle and saccule of the otolith organs activations. So these are great exercises, kind of an intro into actual vestibular training. Now, can you do this in different lunging positions, different body positions, different head motions, all that kind of stuff? yes, this is going to create more of a neuro load on the nervous system that could actually in turn create bigger impacts on overall brain development. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for tuning in.